Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Tony Purvis, Chief Computing Ecosystem.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tony Purvis. Luckily, I do not sit at Fort Meade. I sit in Oklahoma City, so I'm away from the front office, and I can get actually work done being away from Fort Meade. So luckily, I did get the opportunity. I guess Mr. Bennett and Mr. Martin got the same memo about Industry Day because Mr. Martin is also TDY. So that's the reason I'm up here giving this briefing as opposed to him. So as you see, his services directorate, there's 3 divisions within there. He's in the front office. Mr. Jeff Bimmel is his civilian deputy. The services directorate makes up about 1,500 civilians, about 900 to 1,000 contractors, and then there's about 10 active duty military. There's 3 divisions. There's enterprise services or application division. That's where all the enterprise services are operated from. You heard a little bit earlier Mr. Carpenter talk about the services deployment activity on the left side. They develop the enterprise services. They're sustained on the right side under Mr. Bennett. Under Mr. Norwood is the acting division chief under the application division. Things like enterprise email, mobility, DEPS, eVoIP, all those things are sustained within that division. The IT services division is also under Mr. Martin. Ms. Kate Feltz is the division chief for that. That's where all of the DISANET workload is sustained. And then the ecosystem is where I sit. The ecosystem, earlier today, although I'm trying to avoid the term DEC, we're getting away from that term DEC, but it's kind of hard to get rid of a 15-year-old term. So the Defense Enterprise Computing Centers that we once were back in January 8th of this year, January 9th we moved into the ecosystem, but all the DECs and all the computing groups that supported all of the computing environments moved into the ecosystem. So also, when I took over the ecosystem in January, there was a compute and storage portfolio. You heard a little bit earlier about different portfolios. The compute and storage portfolio really is DISA's on-prem government-managed cloud offering. It's really the infrastructure, the compute, the storage, the communication infrastructure that make up the on-prem government-managed cloud offering for DISA. So a little bit more about ecosystem. I was talking to some people earlier about what this is, and I've briefed this chart, I would say, 200 times in the past 10 months. So I'll probably skip over some things that I shouldn't. So I'll be out back when we're finished. So if you really want to deep dive on ecosystem, I can go into it for probably 4 hours if you want to, maybe over a beer. But really, it's one virtual data center. So we took all the former computing centers and threw them in the air. With all the people that support the computing environment, whether it be engineering support, communication support, the day-to-day operation support, and threw them in the air and placed them into 8 lines of business, and that's what you see on the right side of the chart. So it's got people that sit in all the data center locations, which we have 10 physical data centers spread across the world, and then we've got some support activities that sit in Fort Meade, Maryland, Denver, Colorado, and Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. So all those people make up the computing ecosystem. The 8 lines of business that we have, the first one is the communication line of business. That's really the Glasshouse Comm. It's the LAN that supports the data center and the computing environment. We've got a cyber line of business that it's sort of my auditing group. They make sure that my system admins and my database people are securing the environment, so it's my auditing group for all the technicians to make sure that if there's any new vulnerabilities come out, they give me a weekly brief to give me a status on what's going on with cyber. The data center line of business is really made up of 3 components. They're responsible for the physical security of the 10 data centers, so I've got a group of people that sit at each one of those data centers that are responsible for in-processing, out-processing, property management, floor management. So it's really that standard group of people that sit across all those data centers. Then also I've got a command and control cell that we stood up that it does incident management. So from a day-to-day ops standpoint, we're very much an idle organization. So my incident management is done out of my C2 group under data center. And then also, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, all of our capacity services contracts are managed out of the data center line of business. There's a small group of about 7 people that manage all of those capacity services contracts. Implementation and sustainment line of business, really there are 2 components. We onboard, probably right now there's 800 different projects that different mission partners, customers are bringing applications to us. So they are onboarding those applications within the data centers. But then there's a sustainment side that also is looking at the application management and database management functions within that line of business. Infrastructure line of business gets into storage management, storage engineering. All my virtualization environments are managed out of there. So we have VMware on our x86 environment, and then on HPUX and Solaris, we use their homegrown or their OEM virtualization tools. Also, my change management and configuration management are also done out of the infrastructure line of business. Mainframe, we still do mainframes. Mainframes are alive and well. A lot of big applications that support the department are on our mainframe environment. We operate 2 different mainframes, our IBM mainframe and our Unisys mainframe environment. That's a soups to nut line of business, so they control everything doing with the mainframe environment, whether it be systems management, whether it be application management, CICS regions, database management. They manage the entire mainframe environment. The server line of business, that's where all the system admins sit. There's about 350 people within that line of business. My systems engineering is in there. And then, like I mentioned, all the system admin functions across a myriad of different operating systems, whether it be any flavor of Windows, Solaris, HPUX, AIX. We probably manage many different, if there was an operating system once made by someone, we probably manage it somewhere. And then something, if I haven't mentioned it to date, special services is where a lot of our enterprise services are run out of. So what we found when we were standing up the lines of business is if there was a function that was done by a line or an old data center and it was combined together and it didn't make sense to break it up into the different lines of business, we kept that holistically together. So enterprise email, mobility, eVoIP, those are some of the enterprise services that are run out of special services. Within the ecosystem itself, we manage about 740 applications from the department, anything from manpower to DLH's distribution system to finance systems for DFAS. Mr. Closter mentioned a little bit earlier, we're in the process of migrating in 5 different Army ERPs. We had our first Army ERP go live last month, LMP. So as we work with the Army to bring on these different ERPs, it's really growing the environment a lot. So I talked a little bit about capacity services. So we've got 2 different capacity services on here. Right now there's many of the existing capacity services contracts are currently in acquisition right now. Can't talk about those. But for those of you that don't know the term capacity services, we've been doing capacity services from a capacity hardware standpoint for about 16 years now. 2001 was our first award, and we awarded it to Unisys back in 2001, and that's how we first got into the data replication business within the Unisys environment. So for 16 years now, we've really cracked the code on how to do this and how to do this right. But we're always looking for innovation and vendors to come in and give us a different way to do business and a different way to think of things. So I had mentioned that we've got our processor capacity services contracts out in source selection right now, and those cover the x86, the HPUX, the AIX, the Spark, and the IBM mainframe environment. So there's 5 different contracts being evaluated right now. Something that we chose to do is to break up the converged or hyper-converged systems. So we pulled those out of our existing capacity contracts, and we're standing up this new integrated capacity services contract to try to get a single award for anything converged, hyper-converged. When you look at this in both of these 2 contracts, and the existing ones that are on the street right now are all 10-year contracts, so it does give the vendors quite a bit of time to amortize the cost and to give us the lowest bang. But we're really looking for a lot of innovation on this integrated one. A lot of the ERPs that we're migrating into DISA, whether it be from the Army, DFAS, or DLA, are all operating on these converged systems or hyper-converged systems. So we're really looking for industry to help us figure a way as we migrate from the old capacity to the new capacity to build in a lot of migration services. Because with these big ERPs, they cannot go down. They cannot be down for 2 weeks at a time to move from the old to the new. So how do we really do a tech refresh from one set of capacity to the new set of capacity and move that data over holistically? So we're really looking for a lot of innovation there. The RFP should be on the street in January, February timeframe, and we're looking for an award late FY18. And that's about a $900 million acquisition over the 10 years. ESS3, our enterprise storage contract, we've awarded 2 previous ones. That's the reason it's the third one, obviously. Something that we learned is that as new vendors come in and want to bid on our capacity contracts, it's really not just about capacity. There is a performance leg to this. So the vendors that bid on this really have to understand that just giving us, like in this case, a spinning disk that can operate this fast, if you can't give us the performance that some of our applications need, that's not what we're looking for. We're not just looking for capacity. There is a true performance leg to this. So as all of our capacity contracts get awarded, understand that it's performance as well as capacity. And that ESS3 contract should be on the street later this FY, and then an award in early or middle 19. The last one that I'll talk about is our labor contracts. We're about to award or go out on the street for 26 new acquisitions for our labor services that cover the 8 different lines of business. We have anywhere between 2 and 4 contracts per line of business that will support the entire ecosystem. So as those go out, they're supposed to go out in 2nd to 4th quarter of 18 and with an award in middle 19. So when you look at those contracts, they're going to cover any service from system administration to database administration to our systems engineering functions to our communications infrastructure function. So really anything that you can think of that operate within a data center, those are the functions that we're looking for in those 26 awards.